All right, good morning and welcome in, everybody. Grab your coffee because it is 7:45 on the East Coast. If anyone's on the West Coast and actually watching this and you haven't gone to sleep or you're still up, if you comment to us, we might give you a T-shirt. Don't know how you're improve you're on the West Coast, but if you're going to grind with the breakdown at 4:48 in the morning, I can't knock that because I know AJ is sound asleep. And no, I'm not making up for the Linebreakers FC episode I missed yesterday. Joey B was itching me and poking the bear saying, you want to talk ACC tourney? Well, we got games that tip at noon today, so you got to go bright and early to catch them all before we start grinding at work. This is College Gamebreakers, brought to you by thebreakdownsports.com. I don't know. I was talking with Sam and Link yesterday. I know you're a UNC fan. Sam always refers to himself as a super fan. Are you just a regular fan or are you a super fan of UNC?
I'd say probably a regular fan. I think I grew up in Raleigh, so that time growing up, I would consider myself a super fan. But having been out of the state for almost 10 years at this point, you definitely lose the allure and the rivalries with Duke and NC State, Wake Forest. Everyone's all in that area, so the less people I see, it's not a constant communication because going into school every day was just a battle, especially after a big game the night before. Mm-hmm. I always thought the worst part of UNC losing to Duke or UNC losing the night before was the next day in school having to face all the people chirping me or the conversations that would come up. It was just annoying and frustrating, but still definitely a UNC fan. Been following them probably since since the Sean May national title, I guess. But so I don't know, 15 years, almost half my life, I guess. But they've always been one of my favorite teams that I follow even more than any pro team.
Well, I was about to say, if you're still friends with them all on Facebook, you can go and just write on their wall and clown on them saying, we got the sweep, you're not going dancing this year. But the team that has, I don't know if it would call them the easiest path, but who's got the 1 seed is UVA. This is all neutral site at UNC at Greensboro. So that's the biggest thing where last night when we talked Pac-12, home court advantage is a huge thing in the Pac-12, especially because of the elevation. Here at the ACC, I don't think we'll see as big as disparities between home and away splits, even though Duke did have some gross splits. But we got 7 teams looking like they're going to make the tourney here. Weird thing is the highest projected seed, which is UVA or Florida State, they're going to be a 5 or a 6. So I don't know when the last time we had the ACC come up and their highest seed is going to be catching up against a 12 or 11. So it's not looking too hot for them, but who would have guessed it? Syracuse is on the bubble going into the tournament. It just feels natural within the past 6 to 7 years that they're always just sitting on the bubble trying to make some late noise.
Yeah, I think, UVA is probably maybe one of the more underwhelming conference winners this year. Definitely, I think, see this on Twitter a lot. A lot of people think they're frauds, not as good as their record, and maybe pulled out a couple lucky wins. But yeah, when you said there's 7 teams in the ACC going in, and they're all between 5 and 10 seeds. So not the strongest, maybe a well balanced conference, but no one is particularly strong or a threat to win the title per se. But I'm just happy UNC after their blowout to Marquette kind of got some two good wins and built some momentum and got themselves off the bubble, and hopefully can just get a win here in the ACC tournament to kind of remove any doubt.
Yeah, so here in this conference, I don't want to say maybe targeting overs is going to be the smart way to attack it, but you have 2 defenses, and even Virginia's defense this season isn't one that is the top 2. It's more of, surprisingly, UNC and Clemson's defense, according to KenPom, are the highest ranked ones there, but you still saw a bunch of their games going over. I don't touch UVA overs because that's just pain, and they're never fun to go at that because of that pace. They were officially the slowest team in the conference. So trends overall, since there is 15 teams in this one, it's really hard to, 15 teams in here. It's really hard to put an overarching trend just because it's the biggest conference, makes this the toughest tournament because, sure, the double bye still only gets you 3 games to win there, but none of these are cakewalks. Syracuse, they have a terrible path, especially because they're the 8. So that's just where when you're just looking at this bracket, sometimes it's just throw it up, see what hits, because who knows what's going to get the momentum. It's a lot of one-day scouting, where in teams in this conference, you have a bunch of different styles. So that's kind of where the one-day scouting is going to come in big. But anything else you saw overarching as a conference, because it's too hard to make one common trend like other ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think just things I looked at, just looking at the ACC standings and looking at their home and away splits, the top 6 teams were 44-4, as a home record. A lot of teams did really well at home. I'm sure that's fairly common with having the top teams, but I just thought 44-4 was a little ridiculous, because I think even UNC was 7-0 at home, but like 3-6 or something away or something like that. So I think stuff like that is interesting. So it's like home court advantage really helped, but playing in Greensboro, I think a lot of teams are used to playing here too. Maybe not with the turnover of players, but I think like all the coaches, everyone knows it pretty well. It's a tournament venue sometimes, so I think it's a pretty decent arena. It's not like one of those makeshift football gyms that turns into a basketball stadium and then shooting becomes impossible. So I think should make for some decent basketball usually. And then just looking over like the past winners, I think basically since the 2000s or the early 2000s, Duke won it as a 5 seed in 2017, and I think that may be the only time we saw someone above with like a top 3 seed win this tournament. And especially true in the last like decade when you have the 15 teams, and if you're a 10 seed or higher, you got to win 5 games. If you're like a 6 or a 5 through a 9, you got to win 4 games. So just such a huge advantage to those top 4 teams. So in terms of looking at outrights, that's definitely something to keep in mind. But you can also take one of those long shots and hope to hedge somewhere along the way. And I think that's one of the few times I think hedging would be like most worth it.
Yeah, the 44-4. I think that's definitely helped by Florida State, because that team just never loses at home. So that's where maybe sure you don't have the elevation. And it's so strange where you've seen Minnesota not win a game. I know they're not in this conference on the road the entire year. So you think it could be easier to win the home games or easier to win away games with the limited or no fans, but we did not see that as the case. So we're looking at – go ahead. Go for it.
I was going to say, like, Virginia is 7-1 at home, Florida State 8-0, VT 6-1, Georgia Tech 8-1, Clemson, UNC. Like, there's one loss, but then it's like UNC is 3-6, Clemson's 2-5, Florida State's 3-4 away. So basically, all these teams had one loss home, and then just picked up all their conference losses in away games.
All right, so if you've tuned into LBFC or any other conference streams, we're all about the gambling. We're about the odds. So when we're looking at the outright table here, you got FSU at plus 230, UVA at plus 310, UNC at plus 450, Louisville at plus 650 with VaTech. Then everyone else gets above plus 1,000. So the first thing that jumped out to me was Georgia Tech being the 4 seed listed at plus 1,000 odds. But then you go pull up the bracket. They do get that one win, which they probably should, even though Clemson may give them a tough game. They go up right against UVA. So it's decent money line odds, because you can essentially, if they do beat UVA, that's a free hedge out. So you're getting a better money line ticket there with the plus 1,000, because I do not believe you would get that anywhere near that in the head-to-head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that stuck out to me was also UNC's, even Louisville's. UNC being the 3rd favorite is the 6th seed. I don't know if that says a lot about VT or just that like bottom part of the bracket I thought is going to be way more open, I would assume. And then even Louisville with the 7th seed having to face Florida State in their next game if they do advance. Kind of 2 teams I looked at and were a little shocked to see how short they were in their outright odds.
Yeah, that is strange, but I guess you got Coach of the Year at Mike Young, but this would be his first ACC tourney coming from Wofford. So a little bit of a step up there, but that style, I mean, we've seen them hang with UNC, so that's really strange where you're giving them essentially 200 better odds for UNC, especially because they'll have one more game under their belt.
I mean, I think Would UNC be favored against Virginia Tech?
It would kind of have to be. I think it would almost be a pick 'em, just given where the two squads are at this season. Because when they matched up earlier in the year, they didn't play this season against each other.
They didn't play. Yeah, no.
Wow,
that's why Virginia Tech never played UNC or FSU. I had this to get to later, but they didn't play them either. They played the least amount of conference games, I think. I don't know if it was the least, but they didn't play as many as some of the others. They only played 12. I don't know why. I thought is it Josh Pastner, the Georgia Tech coach? I feel like he deserved ACC head coach of the year more than Mike Young. But maybe it was the turnaround that VT had. I know they were pretty terrible last year, but also looking at their schedule, one of the most inconsistent teams it seemed like throughout the year. Never really got on a roll. They'd get a good win and then just an atrocious loss back over and over and over again.
The face shield over at Pastner. He rocks that hard. He's stuck with that since day one.
Yeah.
All right. Instantly crossing off. Well, Duke, no questions there asked. Everyone in the first round, you just have to look out. And then this is where you have to be looking at the paths that you think you can get there. And yes, I know Syracuse needs to make some noise. I don't think that first game against NC State's a layup, but that team's riddled with injuries. So little brother there, as Joey B likes to refer them to. I do think Cuse would have some tempting odds if you really have faith that they can take out UVA at plus 4,000, because you can just start hedging it after that. But yeah, I'm crossing off basically anyone in the first round playing in, and then past that, I would attempt to look at it, but playing plus 230 where you have to win 3 games. I talked about this last night in the Pac-12. If you project their money line odds and do an open parlay and do it the 3 games for Florida State, what's that value going to be? Because you could get same to the close plus 230 odds, especially if they do draw UVA in the finals.
Yeah, that's definitely something I consider too. But yeah, I would agree. Any 10 seed or above, and even on my first, I would cross off UNC and Louisville too. Not because I don't think they could win it, especially with UNC, but just same consideration to Florida State. I think with UNC, they would be either pick'ems or dog in their 3 last games. So it's a 14 parlay you could roll over. That I think wouldn't be the worst approach, or it'd be way better than taking on plus 450. So definitely something to look at there. And then same with Louisville. I think being they're the 4th favorite at plus 650, just not enough value for them to beat Florida State and probably Virginia Tech, and then still have to face probably a UVA in the final. So pretty tough odds for them, I think.
Now it gets to the tough part of who do we think we can win it, because you can make a case for majority of the teams here. I mean, UVA, this offense plays at the slowest rate, 357th. So literally Ken Palm saying they're slower than teams that didn't even play this season. I guess that could make sense since you have data points to compare, but literally has them ranked under the Ivy League. They dropped 3 straight before beating Miami and Louisville to end the season, which not too impressive wins when you just dropped against Florida State, Duke, and North Carolina State. That Duke loss that UVA had late in the season, sure, maybe the refs are helping Duke to get them there, but it's just this defense has them ranked outside the top 25, which is that's where their bread and butter is done, because they can still put up 70 in some games, but we've seen their offense get stuck in the 60s. And all of their losses, except for against Gonzaga, so you just throw that one out the door, they haven't scored more than 65 in one of those games. So it's just where a team can not figure out that tempo, but it's starting to get a little bit more easier to break this team, because this is probably their weakest overall team with Hauser, Huff, Murphy, and Kiki Clark. You got Hauser and Huff as your 2 go-to guys, but you usually have the guards as the ones in UVA that are controlling the tempo, and Kiki Clark is not a scrub or anything by that means, but he doesn't have the same versatility, the same NBA projected caliber that usually their small forwards or their guards used to have. I don't think Hauser or Huff, this whole team, I just don't see an NBA player on there like we've seen Brogdon and other guys come through there. So that's where, even though UVA, I like them just because I think they have the best path to get there, because I'm still not sold on this Georgia Tech team, or even if they drew Clemson, it just seems like they've just owned those teams this year. So that's where, yeah, they beat Georgia Tech both times, kind of considerably, and Georgia Tech scored 62 and 49, so they don't really fit into that. So that's where I think I hate saying the number one team. You can win it, obviously, but UVA has the best path, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I'm trying to find something real quick, but yeah, I like you said. I mean, UVA doesn't have an NBA player on their team. The Hauser, I think, transferred from Marquette. The couple games I watched of him never really stood out to me, and I think the guard play is the biggest question for them, because I think Clark is like a pesky kind of like a playmaker, but in terms of creating his own shot and getting to the rim, I don't think he has the size or like the athleticism to kind of take over a game every now and then. But yeah, I think any top 4 seed, and then besides that, I'll throw in UNC just because I think they're pretty inconsistent. Every time they give their fans hope, they turned around with a poor performance. So who knows? But I think they do have a fairly easy draw. I don't know too much about Virginia Tech, but I wouldn't be scared of them going up in the quarterfinals. So not the worst, but I think Florida State has the most talent and maybe the best chance to win here. But again, without the value, without maybe a plus 300 or something like that, wouldn't look to back them. But yeah, I think UVA and VT are my least favorite top 4s. I don't know. I'll have to get more of your opinions on Georgia Tech, but just from the eye test and looking at them, I know I learned who Moses Wright was yesterday, so it may speak a lot to my knowledge on Georgia Tech. But just from looking over their team, having the ACC Player of the Year, a couple good defenders, and some senior guards, I think they've got a pretty strong chance. It's just a matter of can they get past UVA, and so that's the biggest question there. But yeah, I think any of the top 4 teams here, and then if you're not taking someone, if you're only taking the other teams basically as a hedge opportunity if you think they can get by some of the top seeds. But it's going to be, I think, like I said, a pretty chalky conference tournament like normal.
Yeah, with Georgia Tech, this is probably the team I've done the biggest 180 on this season, where I don't know if you tailed this, but that one of the first bets of the season on Thanksgiving Eve, they had the quadruple overtime game where they lost at home to Georgia State. So I caught their full first one, and that probably was a little bit too much recency bias. Then I tweeted a meme about how I wasn't going to bet on Georgia Tech, Nebraska, because I thought it was just going to be the grossest game. And they were sitting at 9-8 on February 12th. Not looking too hot. Definitely nowhere near the tournament. Then they just rattled off 6 straight wins. And that's the way to get you to become the hottest team. I don't know what Pastner did there, because you had Jose Alvarado, who I think won Defensive Player of the Year, and you have Moses Wright, who won the Player of the Year because just of what those two do. They both log over 85% of their minutes, with DeVoe being the third string there. So their deepness is what could potentially keep this team out of a long run, just because you're relying on those 3 guys. UVA can scheme, and sure, their defense isn't that top caliber, but it's where this team is not easily to scheme against, but they just are relying on this defense that's found its rhythm late. That was their question mark earlier. Sure, their offense was finding it, but you went up against a dismantled Pittsburgh, Miami, Florida team, Syracuse, Duke, and Wake. So some of their wins over that last stretch wasn't against the top dogs, where Vod Tech was the top one. So these guys could be a little bit of frauds potentially coming in here, but they definitely proved it that other teams aren't taking care of business against everyone, especially in the bottom half of the ACC. So you got to give Georgia Tech credit for it, but Florida State would be my favorite one out of all of them, just because in the preseason preview, College Gamebreakers, that's who I projected to win the ACC. They came up a game short to Florida State to get there. That loss to Notre Dame kind of stings a little bit, and the loss to UNC. So they lost 2 of their past 3. Only went over Boston College, which that team's already had their coach fired. They have 0 shots. So I guess that's our Boston College talk that we had to give here. But the height of Florida State is just – UNC is the only team that can match them guy for guy, just because there's lineups where Florida State runs out there that 6'5" is their smallest guy. A 6'4" is the smallest man in the rotation. So they're just a big body team. All of their losses have came on the road, like you've alluded to. So this is where neutral site. I mean, I always will buy stock in Leonard Hamilton. He knows this ACC too well at this point. So that's where, sure, he probably, other than Bennett, I mean, those two are both have the prestige now, the resume for it. They have the bodies. I just like Florida State where the plus 230s keeping me off it, but that would be who I think has the best shot to win it. I don't think Vodtech has a legitimate shot, even though they do have the 3 seed.
Yeah, I mean, I think they I ranked the top 4 seeds. I put Florida State first. Maybe we'll get into it a little more, but I have Georgia Tech second, UVA third, and then Virginia Tech fourth. And I'd even put UNC over Virginia Tech. UNC could beat Virginia Tech, and I also think UNC has a better chance of beating Florida State, like you just talked about. So VT's definitely in a tough spot, but yeah, I mean, maybe they'll shock us. Maybe they have a little bit of a run in them or some surprises up their sleeve. But I can't say I'm too high on them, especially given their place in the bracket.
Yeah, and I mean, the one case when I am looking for who I'm confident to back, it's just that Vodtech, even though they rely on that 3 within conference play, they're only shooting it at 34.5%, and they're one of the highest rate teams. Florida State is shooting 40% from deep, so the regression could be due from there, but they do, even though have that height, have the shooters. It depends what makes you more confident in your top teams. Are you someone that's going to buy into the high variability of a 3-point rate shooting team, or do you like someone that likes to get the 2s, likes to get to the foul line? And that's just kind of where none of the top teams like to get to the foul line. UNC, Vodtech, NC State, and Pittsburgh are the teams that are best getting to the line. So that's where, especially in these type of tournaments, I try to find that combination because I'm getting into the long shots who we think can do it. And this is tough because the one team that has just completely fallen apart after being at 9-1 was Clemson. They're a team that, even though it's not looking too great, the plus 2,000 is just tempting me and just screaming at me to say you can do it because they've won their past 6 of their last 7, only lost to Syracuse. Once again, they didn't take out anyone that much of note because Georgia Tech and UNC were the 2 wins over that span. They got smashed by Duke by 26. And that's one of the things that concerns me, but that was off their mini COVID pause. This team has 0 offense. They're not fun games to watch. They play at the UVA style, but they beat Georgia Tech, or they split their 2 meetings with Georgia Tech. So that's kind of where at plus 2,000 and Georgia Tech sitting with the odds of plus 1,000. I mean, I'm just getting one that has 1,000 more better odds and a pure almost toss up. Georgia Tech might be 2.5-point favorites if they do get Clemson. But I think if you want to find a long shot, sure, you have to get UVA, you have the extra game, but Clemson would be the team I'd be targeting because we saw them play at the top 15 caliber, so they're starting to find their rhythm back. I'm just going to double down with Clemson because I've been riding them for a decent amount this season for my long shot.
Yeah, that's one team I just kind of skipped over. Can't say I know. I knew they had some hot streaks and then kind of got knocked out with COVID and then came back and were kind of a little up and down. So not a team I looked at, but yeah, I think for me, it's Georgia Tech just because I think they have a chance to beat UVA. I know they lost to them twice already, but looking at the stats, I know Moses Wright didn't have his best game. And I think that probably has a little bit to do with the defense UVA runs. But yeah, I would look towards Georgia Tech more than Clemson, but Rex may have talked me into Clemson, but I just think the values at the top half of that bracket. So I think Virginia is the most susceptible, even more than Florida State. And then just the odds at the bottom of the bracket in terms of long shots, I don't really see a ton of value. You're not going to get Notre Dame making a run. I think Louisville's hard because they got Florida State right off the bat. So I just think for me, it's Georgia Tech or nobody, but you may have talked me a little bit into Clemson just for the little better odds. But yeah, I just think just kind of targeting some team to take down Virginia would be my approach, just because I think they're they obviously have the system in place, but maybe the talent is a little bit lower than some of these other teams.
Yeah, that you mentioned at the top half of the bracket, UVA's at plus 310, and then everyone else is at plus 1,000 or more in that top half. So
Yeah.
you nailed that on there. Yeah, thank you for helping me put that together, because you could just throw 2 or 3 at the bigger odds. But it's this ACC tournament. It's the biggest one that we have games-wise, number of matchups, teams that run, because they don't – I mean, you still get a double bye, but you still have 3 games. It's pretty crazy, but no other conference has 15 teams. The Big Ten's close to it. But, all right, upsets to watch for. This is where we're going to try to see if we can find the hungry dog early on in the conference. Who knows what happens after 2 or 3 games unless you have a hungry dog potentially today. So I'll kick it off to you first. Who would you be looking at to put that Taco Bell money on the money line underdog?
I mean, I guess off the start today, maybe put a little bit on Boston College. I know they have their own issues, but who knows what Duke team shows up. You saw at the end of the UNC game, they seemed like they threw in the towel with like 5 minutes to go. But it is Coach K, probably gets his team a little riled up. In terms of the other, I don't know, games today, I wouldn't look at anyone there. But on Thursday, I would just look at it that whoever advances between State and Syracuse to maybe get a little upset over UVA. That's just from, I don't know, I think the one that's most likely. I don't think Louisville has a great chance to get over Florida State. And then who knows if UNC will be a heavy underdog to Virginia Tech by any means. But definitely would look at maybe a Syracuse or NC State. Hopefully Syracuse, or maybe, I guess NC State just beat them. So I think either of them have a chance. I don't know what the line would be set at, but yeah, I think the 8-9 over UVA, if they had a chance, that'd be something I'd look at. I don't know if it was going to have good odds or any chance of coming in, but just the first place I'd look to take an upset of any sort.
Yeah, because when you're looking at it, and I was able to run some quick projections for you, the UNC game on a neutral site, what site I use, this says UNC would be like a half-point favorite there. So even though you have the 6 versus the 3, Vegas obviously can do it, but it wouldn't be a huge underdog there. Louisville versus Florida State, that'd be a decent odds there, but just like you, I wouldn't want to touch it. Syracuse or State would probably have the biggest money line odds to come in against UVA. So the way, if it goes kind of chalky or not, that's where your biggest one would be. Don't want to make you get upset at 8:15 in the morning, but Notre Dame is the sneaky one that could potentially get them. Sure, Bray's squad, there was questions if he was still even going to come back next season. I think that's a little silly because I do think he comes back. It's hard to let a guy go after this season. Sure, they went 10-14, 7-11 in conference, had 2-3+ games losing streaks, beat Florida State in the last game of the season, which I found strange after losing to NC State, losing to Boston College, Louisville, and Syracuse, where that's not what you want to see when you're trying to find it. But going up against UNC, they lost to them at UNC all the way back on January 2nd, only by a bucket, 1 point. So that's where this is the shortest rotation. Preston Hub placed 93% of their minutes. Bray, plays 6 guys max in his game. Sometimes you get a 7th that they get into foul trouble. This defense isn't anything, but they can get hot from 3-1 game. And that's just where UNC, we saw them have some better shooting games as of late. We saw them lose some games earlier in the season when the shots weren't falling. So just a pure number-wise, I think that's the one where everyone's going to be overlooking Notre Dame or overlooking UNC just to get past Notre Dame quick. But I think that one could be a closer one than people expect.
Yeah, I should have written that down because I would be shocked. Maybe I wouldn't be like shell shocked if they lost. Or I would be, I guess. I wouldn't be totally surprised if they did lose to Notre Dame, but maybe I guess not totally shocked if they lost, but maybe a little surprised. Yeah, but is Preston Hub a guard?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even any team like Notre Dame or any team that can get hot from 3, UNC's just historically struggled with. There's been plenty of like Wofford games or Davidson games where their guards just get hot from 3 and they pull off an upset. That's just kind of formula and stuff you need to beat UNC's. Any team that gets hot from three scares me, and UNC may not have. They've got one 3-point shooter basically, so they don't have the explosive offensive firepower, and they don't have the strongest guard defense. Just even this year or at any time, any star guard just tears UNC up every game, and you can see it coming from a mile away. So definitely not the worst take there, especially with a team that can just get hot from three.
Yeah, only one guy in the rotation of the 6 doesn't attempt threes. Everyone else has above 60 or 70 attempts, and they're shooting it at – I was surprised when I saw that they're the 5th best three-point shooting team within the conference, and they're shooting it at 35.5% within conference play. So, yeah, UNC, if you can just get those big guys out further away from the rim, put them in positions where they add guard off the dribble, and that's usually where UNC gets a little bit more susceptible. All right, so is there any other key games or anything matchups we want to talk about before we hit into our semis and championship?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I wrote down was Virginia Tech never played UNC or Florida State this year, so it's going to be interesting to see if they do match up with either of them. Could be a good first time ACC matchup, but besides that, I don't see any key games. Do you got anything?
That's wild because I saw that they didn't play Florida State, but I didn't see that they didn't play UNC. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just with the pauses and everything. When you don't have any sample points or data points to go against, that's what really makes it tough to see what would happen. But yeah, that's a good angle where if they haven't played each other yet, it's more of a coin flip than this conference already is. I mean, we got 3 good games today. When I was looking at the odds, who's laying 12.5 with Duke? Yeah, BC stinks, but I don't know. And maybe the refs want to help them. That's where the Louisville game and Duke game, that's probably the one I'm going to be tuned into the most of a matchup we didn't hit about, because if the NCAA, because they're always clean, upright guys, they don't want to help Duke get in that tourney. They wouldn't want to help them. So that's where if Duke gets 2, if they get past Florida State, then we actually have to give them legitimate consideration that could they make March. I think they have to make it to the finals at this point. Yeah. But the narrative of Duke, we'll see how much help they get today from their refs to kind of give you a barometer what's going to happen tomorrow against Louisville.
Nothing I'd love more for Duke to beat Boston College, beat Louisville, beat Florida State, and then lose to UNC in the semis just for UNC to knock them out of the tournament twice. That would be a pretty good feeling.
Then you're definitely going back to those Facebook walls and writing it everywhere.
I'm sending messages to people I haven't talked to since middle school just to talk some shit.
All right, let's hear your semifinal matchups. Who do you got up in the top half?
Man, it's hard not to go chalk, but a top half just UVA, Georgia Tech, two teams that I think should get W's, should advance, should make for. I think they played 2 great games in the regular season, so I'd be excited to watch a third one.
Yep, and I got UVA Clemson. I just think because Clemson is a team that are going to take a bigger of a long shot on, I think they make it to the top. In the bottom half, this is the one where you alluded to it, that Vatech, UNC, Notre Dame game, I've probably crossed out and scribbled out that line pretty much because I do have Florida State up there in the top one. I mean, they're just my favorite team to watch this season, so that's where got to keep rooting for them to pull it further. And I do think UNC does get it there. Roy's getting the boys hot at the right time. Joey B tried to call me a fanboy a little bit, but I like to find where they have the value. Sure, I do think Notre Dame could potentially upset them, and I'll definitely be taking the points in that one. But I do think UNC and Roy does get past Vatech. Oh, nice, just because the experience, even though the team doesn't have the guards to get there, and the same reasoning why I think Notre Dame could beat UNC because all they do is shoot from threes. But we've seen teams with a little bit more length have affected Vatech more than teams with length have affected Notre Dame. So that's just where I do have UNC, Florida State at my bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. I'm not gonna go against UNC. Not gonna go against Florida State either. I think just the 2 strongest teams down there. Virginia Tech too much of a question mark to get them to advance to the semis. I think UNC has the strength, the schedule. I think honestly that Marquette game may help them, not in the long run, but just gave them more minutes, more games, more experience. I think a loss is just as valuable as a win sometimes. So going into that VT game, they should be ready, assuming they get past Notre Dame.
Yeah, that Marquette game, and then who Duke came up, or who with UNC came up next. That was the perfect reasoning explanation of, with college basketball, there's nothing more you need than short-term memory.
Yep.
All right, up top, I got Clemson taking out UVA. And when they did play this one time, it was their first game off their pause where they got shellacked by 35. So short-term memory, throw that out the window. I just think it's Clemson and UVA are the exact replicas of each other. And I'm taking the team that's not as talented, probably not as well, like, I guess not coached, because Brownwell is getting up there or Barnwell's getting up there better. But I just want to ride my long shot. Think we do see some craziness in this ACC tournament. The legs could be dead at this point, but Amir Sims, as long as he can get going, I'm pretty confident in there. You got Nick Honor, Dawes, Tyson, other guys in the rotation, which are solid. But I'm just going to roll with Clemson to go back, make me age well. I have to go back and find an old episode, but Clemson gets to my finals.
Yeah, for me, I'll take Georgia Tech. I think we're both hating on the UVA maybe a little too much, but give me the ACC Player of the Year. Give me the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. They got another guard, DeVoe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scrolling. Yeah, I just think I know they don't have the depth. Maybe they kind of fall short in the finals, but give me those three talented guys. I think they'll do enough. They have the senior experience to I don't know, take down Virginia. They won't get beat 3 times in the year. You know, it's always hard. So give me Georgia Tech over UVA in that semi.
Well, if you look at UVA's wins, because I do think they deserve to get a little bit of hate, because their wins in conference are against Notre Dame, Wake, BC, Clemson, Georgia Tech, NC State, Pitt, Miami, Louisville. Like, you didn't mention any of the top 3 seeds there. So that's kind of where they're susceptible to teams that are a little bit of the pack. Yeah, they lost to Florida State, Virginia Tech, and other teams. The loss to NC State's probably the biggest head scratcher in Duke. So it's just that they didn't take care of business, and they weren't as clean as we've seen of the teams recently. And I think that's just solely for the talent-wise. So I think, especially if they're going to give them plus 310 odds, because I want to call them a square, because there is a little bit of value if you think they get past Georgia Tech and Clemson easy, but when you're not giving them the outright odds, I think the books know what we're alluding to here. Who do you got at the bottom?
This is the toughest one for me, but I'll have to take Florida State. I know UNC had a great comeback win against them, but that was one of the first games they had fans in their stadium, so I think that really helped kind of pull them along in that one. So I think FSU gets the job done here. I think just the best. I think they're the best team in the ACC. They should be the 1 seed, because goes off record, but I think are deserving of the top team in the ACC. And I think last year they were on the path to win the ACC tournament. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to make up for it this year. So yeah, I think FSU will get past UNC, not let them kind of come back on it. But it should be a good game. I could see it going either way for that.
Man, even when you beat them by 8 on February 27th, you're still going to go against it and not roll with your boys, roll with the T-shirt you're wearing. They split the matchups. They Florida State won by 7 and lost by 8. So that's the most like pure where you could potentially say this is a toss-up. And yeah, Florida State didn't win it because they went 11-4 in conference when UVA went 13-4. So they legitimately just lost it from not playing enough games that they pulled out 2 more. Who would have potentially saw what happened? But I have to agree with you there. I'm rolling with Florida State to get past UNC. That's one of the, because I watched that full game on that Saturday. They both have the size. Neither team's playing a small guard in there, so they do match up with each other well. So that's where I wouldn't be confident to lay the points with Florida State, because I think they would be laying probably 5-ish. Mm-hmm. Even though it is neutral, I still think they'll give them a little bit more respect, give them 5. And that's just where in conference tourney time, teams could foul to the death and get that 5 to easily cover. But I do think we see another close one since both games were coming down to the wire. Who do you have cutting down the nets?
I don't want to take it because it's chalky, but give me Florida State. I think they're the betting favorites for a reason. And at this point, if I held a Georgia Tech future, I'd probably hedge out of it just a little bit. But give me Florida State. I think even if they were to play UNC, I think the guard play is what kind of puts them above the rest, and just the athleticism around their whole lineup. But yeah, I just think they're the number 2 seed. They're the betting favorites for a reason. I don't think there's a ton of value in backing their future odds, but I see them kind of cutting down the nets here in the ACC.
Damn, that's a tough one too, because in my matchup, Clemson and Florida State, they both split, but their most recent matchup was January 23rd. The other one all the way came in December 29th, where I think even though this season I like to see the more recent matchups potentially pan out, but they haven't gotten there. And yeah, Florida State would just be way too much for Clemson to handle. Like you said, if our long shots that we like do end up getting there, it's the easy free way to hedge out. So I wouldn't say we're going chalk, even though it's the betting favorite. Florida State, I like them to be the Kings in Greensboro as well. And Joey B, any last words before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I know I went against my fandom, but I'd rather be right than be rooted as a fan. So I'll put my ACC credibility on the line here on this one.
I mean, you got some good calls coming out here, because if the 8 or the 9 gets over UVA, if Georgia Tech makes a good run, you might have to think about putting some more work under your belt, because we do have some Champions League matches today. Definitely check out Gamebreakers FC stream yesterday with AJ and Joey B. Gave you out some good winners, gave you out some good plays. We were live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at thebreakdownsports.com and BRKDWN_sports. We're crushing the content game right now with pods, streams, and articles. Every sport you need there, even esports, ponies. We're just covering a huge spread of sports. So if you need any insights on gambling, any insights on teams, the Breakdown Sports got it for you. You can follow us under our heads. And great, it's 8:30. Got a nice little meeting for work, so I got to jump right into it. So Joey B, I thank you for coming on for a nice little morning stream of the ACC tournament. We'll definitely be watching the games today, so tweet at us if you want to talk any games.
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, and